Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Long and Foul podcast. I'm here with my boy, Joe Doyle, and we're just kind of talk about the returns for the Taylor Williams and Taijuan Walker trades that just happened and kind of get into some of these prospects because a lot of them are less known than the people in previous trades. So, Joe, I know you're a fan of Matt Brash. What do you want to tell me about this guy?
Yeah, so Matt Brash is the player to be named later, coming over in the Taylor Williams deal from the Padres. I had a feeling it was going to be Matt Brash before it was announced, just because when you look at some of the prospects that the Padres had in their system, Brash just kind of fits the profile of what the Seattle Mariners covet in a young pitcher, and I'm sure he was on their radar in the 2019 draft. Fourth round pick out of Niagara. He's just one of those guys that has a smaller demeanor. He gets a ton of extension. He gets a ton of life up in the zone with his fastball. And what it allows him to do is miss bats and work at the top of the zone better than, guys that are coming in with a steeper vertical approach angle. So, yeah, I think he definitely fits exactly what Seattle's looking for. He's kind of cut from the exact same cloth as someone like a 110. High spin rate fastball, works up in the zone. Definitely doesn't have the gas that 10 does, but I'm really excited. A quick scouting report on him. He's 91 to 94. He's a starting pitcher right now, but I think there's a more likely chance than not he'll end up in the bullpen. Some high effort in his delivery, a little bit of head whack that had reportedly gotten better this spring. Changeup is his best secondary, and it is a definitive 60 changeup given the data on its vertical movement, horizontal movement, its arm action, its separation. It's just a really good pitch, and then he's got a pretty fringy breaking ball to go along with that. So I'm always a fan of going after kids in the MLB draft that don't come from a Power 5 school, are lesser known, but just have juice. They just have stuff, and I think that's what you're getting with Matt Brash.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I agree. I do see a bullpen arm most likely. It seemed like he was already starting to trend that way a little bit, but he was a starter. So I wouldn't be surprised to give him a couple opportunities to see what he looks like after they kind of tweak him however they're going to tweak him. But I agree. He's definitely the kind of guy that's done really well in this system. Good call on the 110, like body type, definitely. Yeah. And more from what I understand, to go into a little bit more of a vertical approach as well, thrown from a little bit lower of a slot. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was definitely the changeup as well. Definitely some really good fading action on it. That sweet spot, 8 to 10 miles per hour of separation. And the biggest thing that jumped on actually both of his secondaries for me was he mimics his arm action pretty well on both. Mm-hmm. So there's some really strong tunneling ability there that, could definitely be unlocked in this system. So I'm pretty excited about him. And I mean, especially for the return on a guy like Taylor Williams, like there's been a common theme throughout a lot of their trades right now, which is turning nothing into something. I mean, Austin Nola got released by Miami, Taylor Williams from nothing from the Brewers, and Taijuan Walker, just a reclamation project, and all good guys.
Too.
But
I mean, we only paid Taijuan, or I should say the Mariners only paid Taijuan $2 million. And in a prorated year, they probably only paid him $500,000 over the course of the year. But yeah, I mean, the return on investment that this team is getting on guys that are being picked up for peanuts is pretty incredible. I wanted to kind of piggyback off of the arm slot thing a little bit with Brash. He has that funky delivery. He's got the 3/4, short arm shotgun kind of looking thing that you've got from like a Joey Gerber right now. Max Scherzer definitely comes to mind when you see him throw a baseball, albeit it's a longer arm action than Scherzer. But I think when Jerry is acquiring someone like this, to move Taylor Williams with 5 years of control and, what I'd say is a 55-60 fastball and a 50-55 slider, you got to think that the Mariners are at least going to give Matt Brash a chance to be a starter, because moving Taylor Williams and his 5 years of control for another guy who, frankly, probably projects to be the same type of caliber reliever with 6 years of control, I don't know if it makes a ton of sense. So you got to think they're at least going to stretch him out a little bit and try to keep him in the rotation. But we'll see. Either way, just given his funk and the data and everything that comes with Matt Brash, I think there's a reasonably safe reliever, big league reliever floor here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that kind of brought back something I didn't mention, which is when I'm watching him, it looks like he's getting really good extension out in front
Yeah,
as well. So
he definitely is.
Definitely some deception there. But I think with Williams too, one, the age, and he's 28 now, so still in his prime, but with that control, there is something there. I think they got to think there's at least more upside in Brash to make a move like that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. But also, like, they kind of already optimized Taylor as much as they can. They had him throw his slider significantly more, I think close to, if not more than his fastball right now. And he's gotten a lot of swing and miss, but at the same time, he had almost a 6 ERA, 5.93 over his time. And he got some saves, so high leverage, but he's always been a really high whip guy. So even if his FIP has kind of always been below what his actual ERA is, it's not shocking that that's the case because he's a guy who's giving up a lot of contact, but also gets a lot of swing and miss. But you got to think, a little more upside with Brash in what they think he can be, whether that's in a relief role or as a starter.
And you got to think that they are selling high on Taylor Williams,
Definitely
to prove himself as a passable, late inning, high leverage guy. I personally don't necessarily think that's his best profile in an MLB bullpen. So the fact that they were able to flip him for a 2019 fourth round pick with an arm with some upside is a good play.
I completely agree. So with Brash, what do you think? If we're doing a top 30 on the system, is he a top 30 guy for you?
He's a top 30 guy for me right now as a designated starting pitcher. I've got him at 28, right behind Jonathan Clase and I think Donnie Walton. I'd have to go back and look at my list if that's totally accurate, but that's about where I've got him, 28. If he's a reliever, he falls back into the 35 to 38 range because like Misevich right now is 29 for me, and he looks like he could be a dynamic lefty reliever for a long time in this league with that fastball curveball combo. So if Matt Brash is a reliever, there's no way, given what Mashevitz has proven, I can put him above that. So yeah, as a starting pitcher and giving him the benefit of the doubt with the breaking balls right now, I would have him as 28, but he's probably a top 50 guy for me if he's a reliever.
I think he's right now closer to top 50 for me, which is more of a sign of how deep the system's become than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I mean, like 2 or 3 years ago, he's easily slotting in to the top 30 without a doubt. But he is a guy, kind of like you mentioned, I want to see if he's starting. And when I'm, gas camp come around next year, he's a guy that I'm like eager to be hearing, okay, how's this guy throwing? What's he look like? Because the Mariners have just simply done so well with his profile in recent years that he's a guy who could just suddenly really jump and maybe he's a totally different player. And then he starts cracking that list. So I'm excited to see what happens there. But moving on kind of into Taijuan Walker, who great for him. I mean, it's already paying returns. He was pretty dominant in his first start, didn't give up a run over 6 innings, pardon me. So I hope it works out for both sides because Taijuan's a good dude. I want to see him succeed, and I kind of want to see him come back next year, hopefully. But I'm pretty excited about the return here. This is definitely one of my guys right here in Alberto Rodriguez. So is there anything you want to jump off with? I'll let you start off before I start going crazy and waxing poetic.
I'm going to let you wax poetic. I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. I didn't actually know who Alberto Rodriguez was. I was convinced that Will Robertson was going to be the return here. I was way more familiar with Will Robertson because I had seen him on the Cape. I understood what the bat was. Rodriguez kind of came out of nowhere for me. I've watched a lot of his film now, what you can find. I like the swing. The swing has come a long ways. I do love that, he's really good friends with Noelvi Marte. I think that goes a long ways. I do. I think that goes a long ways in player development is being comfortable with the guys that are around you and you've developed with over time. So, yeah, I mean, he's put up good numbers in the GCL and looks like he's a decent chance to be a power speed guy if he reaches his ceiling. But honestly, my only overall takeaway from this entire thing is this outfield class, this farm full of outfielders is unbelievably loaded right now.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid. And I think a big thing that the organization talks about quite a bit that I strongly agree with is you want to have waves of talent. And
Yeah.
as strong as this outfield is, it's a lot of guys that are fairly close to the majors, or even guys they could wait on for a while to bring up, like Julio. Like, he's super advanced for his age. So he's even coming up. Alberto Rodriguez is going to be probably, 4 or 5 years, maybe quicker. He's kind of profiled as someone that might move quickly, but he's going to be a while, right? He hasn't played above rookie ball. So I think that's kind of nice to be filling it up for if we move a couple of these guys, or once guys start to get towards the end of their contracts, he could be just about ready to come up. So I'm pretty excited about that, but he's the guy who stands out. Every once in a while, I do these kind of like algorithmic things for pitchers and hitters to determine who is going to do, whatever, like get a bunch of swinging strikes, how that profile, stuff like that. And I did one for who projects to hit for a very high average and have a high BABIP particularly. I just kind of come up with a system, let Chip run his magic. And Alberto Rodriguez actually was a guy who I knew before this because he really stood out for a guy who projects to hit for average and high BABIP in the pros. So I'm pretty excited about it. Kind of get into a little bit of backstory of him because a lot of people don't know probably. He was,
let me hear it.
Not maybe a top 30 that you see on MLB Pipeline or anything like that, but he was a known guy coming over the international market. I think Baseball America had him in the top 50, and he was a $500,000 signing. So he's not just some guy who popped up out of nowhere. He's been a known commodity that I'm sure the Mariners have been a little high on for a while if they're making a move like this. But kind of stood out as, 5'11", 180 or so, kind of going to be a left field, center field profile. Doesn't have the strongest arm and hasn't been the best in the outfield just yet. It's kind of mixed reports on how fast he is. But this dude has just always hit. Short, compact, left-handed swing, kind of controlled violence, got a nice bat path with it, and he just has a natural feel for having a, high, solid vertical bat angle and just getting quality contact when he makes contact. And he also doesn't swing and miss much, nor does he project to. So I kind of see him as a guy who has a chance to have a real plus hit tool. For the rest of the profile, I don't know, maybe average power is probably what it's going to be. He gets the ball in the air quite a bit, and he uses all fields. So it's possible that it could play above the actual like raw power in games. Not quite sure on that, but it's not going to be the sexiest profile ever, but it's probably going to be a guy who has a chance to play a couple games in center field, mostly playing left field, and is just going to get on base. And I love that profile. It's the most important tool. And when you dive a little deeper into his stats, he's a guy who actually ticked down a bit to a 26.8% line drive rate, which is really solid.
That's really good.
Yeah, it actually makes his 301 average, like, it underperformed what it should have been last year. Really cut down on his infield fly balls as he moved up level, which is always a really encouraging sign. And then he hit the ball in the air 37.3% of the time, which is more than his 35.9% ground ball rate. So this is a guy who's hitting line drives and driving the ball out of the stadium a little bit. He's going to grow into more power. Right now it's mostly doubles, but he did manage to hit 16 extra base hits in 47 games, which is solid for a guy who's 5'11", that's 18 years old.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me too is this isn't some guy who's just pulling everything for a line drive. He pulled only 37.5% of the time, and then was exactly even 31.3 in both center and right field. Center and left field, going the opposite way.
Right.
And he also was a almost 10% walk rate with just a 16.4% strikeout rate.
So he's a guy I love right there.
Yeah. He's patient. He makes good contact, doesn't swing and miss. The swing projects to go well. He's has some pedigree, and he's had fantastic performance so far. So I'm pretty excited. He's been very good stealing bases. I haven't had too much of a chance to see him run personally, but it kind of seems like mixed reviews. Some people say he's an above average. Some people say he's going to be below average at maturity. Other people say he's plus, but whatever he's doing right now, he definitely has good instincts because he's 13 for 15 stolen bases last year, which you love to see. Yeah. And if you have good instincts, you might be able to play center field even if you're only an average runner. So that would be huge for him because he just has an average arm. It's probably not going to play in right where he's playing right now. But
you know what the whole thing reminds me of? The whole thing kind of reminds me of the swing, the profile, the batted ball profile, even the body. It reminded me a lot of Jose Ramirez. And I don't think that you want to put a comp of Jose Ramirez on anyone because that's really, really good. But, Jose Ramirez is a small, stout guy, switch hitter. Obviously, Alberto is just a lefty, but really gets through the ball, lifts the ball, a little slow out of the box, which is kind of what you get from Jose Ramirez. So yeah, I mean, if he comes up and the hit tool is the carrying tool and some of the tools kind of catch up, that's kind of what happened with Jose Ramirez. And he didn't make his debut until, I don't think Jose Ramirez debuted until he was like 25 or 26. He was definitely an older prospect that was more of a non-starter in conversations, just kind of a fill-in, but really worked his way into prominence. My question for you on Rodriguez is, you said that he's probably going to be 3 or 4 years. Seattle's going to have to make a decision on him for the 40-man roster November of 2022, so about 26 months from now. Is he the type of guy that you think has an advanced or a mature enough profile that he's going to be a serious conversation to be added at that point? Or, are we going to be sitting around November 1st, 2020 thinking, or 2022 thinking, is this guy quad A? Should we keep him? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. I think at least he's showing right now he can play all 3 outfield positions if you need to, which is huge. You don't want to slot him in right field, I don't think, with his arm strength, unless that ticked up. But he can play all 3, which is big for being on that 40-man, because if you're just left field only, it's tougher to get on there. But I think anytime you get a hit tool like this, he's going to be fairly advanced pretty quickly. And as we've kind of seen with players like Jose Ramirez, which you mentioned, which I do actually see, as crazy as that sounds, and Bregman, like, the hit tool is the most important thing in baseball right now, right?
Yep.
Like, you can work around with someone's position, you can work around with their power, but if they know how to make good quality contact and hit the ball in the air, they can be very, very, very solid players. Yeah, I think this is kind of one of those players that, maybe 5-10 years ago, we would have said, yeah, it's kind of like a high floor, maybe not the highest ceiling prospect, but kind of as we've seen now, the ceiling might be a lot higher than we think. So I think it's a great flyer to take, and I'm pretty excited about him.
Another thing that comes into play with these is you move Taijuan Walker, which was the right thing to do. I mean, the team had 24, 25, 26 innings left on his contract this year. So he wasn't going to give you what you needed. You had to move him for something. So to be able to get a top 20 or top 25 prospect from another organization for that small a rental and that small a track record, I think is a huge success. But what this is doing is it's just continuing to build. It's building and building and building. And as we saw with San Diego, if 2022 comes around and there's a Mike Clevenger available on the market, or there's a Jack Flaherty on the market because, things have turned south for the Cardinals, this is the type of prospect that you want to be able to combine in a package to pull someone else, So if I think he was ranked number 17 by Baseball America, or 19 or somewhere in that range, where would you slot in Alberto Rodriguez, A-Rod 2.0 for the Mariners?
I think you have to put him right around the Jonathan Clase category. I think he's kind of a fairly similar player, maybe a bit more ceiling just because he's a physically bigger person, not quite as fast, but yeah, I think it's a fairly similar profile. So I would have to say probably right around there, which is going to be, for me, after the additions, maybe right around the 18 to 22 range.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right for me. I'd probably slot him in there, probably 24 or 25, but my rankings are obviously a little bit different than yours. But either way, we're both in agreement that this is a top 30 prospect for the Mariners. And anytime a guy is on a list, period, it doesn't matter what kind of list it is. If it's a reputable list like Baseball America, like Pipeline, to a lesser degree like Prospects Live, they're going to get notoriety. And when time comes to go all in and go get your pitcher and go get the supplemental pieces you need for a playoff run, guys like Alberto Rodriguez are going to fit that mold, especially because this team now has 17 outfielders that they could run out there.
At least.
I don't know. It's pretty wild. But Alex, I don't have anything else to add. What about you, man?
No, I'm good. I'm just kind of excited to see what the system's going to look like and excited for the future, which is the usual Mariners way.
It is. It's perpetually looking forward to the future, 20 years strong. All right, man. Well, hey, this has been a pleasure. Episode 2. As always, we're going to keep chugging along with this, with Mariners news, with AL West news, with American League news, whatever comes down the pipeline. We're going to give our 2 cents. So, Alex, it's a pleasure, man. Looking forward to some more Mariners baseball and more prospect action here in the near future.
All right, until episode 3.
All right,
Thanks for
man.
listening.